What is up, guys? Welcome back into the College Football Every Game on the Board podcast, part number 2. I am Drew Martin on the solo mission here, an 8-game card going from 133, 134 Syracuse, Florida State, the Saturday card here, down to 147, 148 UMASS and Penn State. So apologies if you're watching on Twitter or YouTube, Every Game on the Board, by the way. We did go a little bit out of order, but on the podcast, I'll put it in correctly. And I know that's where a lot of you guys are listening. Really cool to see the podcast grow through the first month plus of the season. But let's get into the games here at the top. 12 noon Eastern, Syracuse and Florida State. ACC matchup here, 56.5 being the total. FSU minus 17 in the hook. 5-0 Florida State, guys. Top 5 team in the country. They've looked good out the gate, and they're hosting the Orange here. Syracuse lost 40-7 last week against UNC. They lost 31-14 the week before against Clemson. Lost 3 straight against the spread, so kind of been overpriced here. And they also lost 38-13 to Florida State last year. So FSU, hey, the better players, they're playing better football right now. It's tough not to just say, hey, do we ride Florida State here, lay the wood with the Seminoles in Florida's capital? I think we do, guys. First game up, I'm liking Florida State minus 17 in the hook. We got next game up, going from the ACC to the SEC, Missouri versus Kentucky, 7:30 Eastern in Lexington. So primetime game here. Should be pretty good atmosphere. Kentucky minus 2.5-point home favorites, 51.5 being the total. By the way, guys, if you're new to Every Game on the Board, sorry for not saying this at the top, just going down in numerical order. If you go to the odds screen, I go to the Wager Talk Live odds screen, those little numbers just going down in order. This is part number 2. We hit every single game in college football, every single week, Every Game on the Board. It's in the name. So next one up here, Missouri and Kentucky. Short home favorites with Kentucky. I do want to point out both of these two teams playing to the over. Talking about totals. 4 straight overs for Missouri, 3 straight overs for Kentucky. Now, Kentucky got to the over last week, mainly due to the Georgia Bulldogs really putting it on them, giving up more than 50 points to Georgia. But they are going to get kind of a drop down in who they're playing to Missouri, although Missouri's a pretty good football team this year. Out the gate, 5-1. And their quarterback, Brady Cook, he's a guy that, he might have a shot to play on Sundays. He's got a 13-2 touchdown to interception ratio. Although do note, both of those interceptions coming last week against LSU. If you bet that game, that last interception, man, that had a point spread kind of bad beat if you were on the wrong side of that with Missouri. I will say this, though, because I'm looking to bet Kentucky in this one, and I lost betting them last week against Georgia. But they've won 2 straight against Missouri. 4 of the last 5 kind of have had their number. And talked about it in terms of, caliber of athlete. It's going to drop down a little bit here for their opponent. And because they've played Missouri well, I think this Kentucky team is very good. They've had a very good season so far outside of that Georgia game. Looked really good against Florida. I think it's more of that type of game at home. Good atmosphere there in Lexington. I think the short home favorite gets it. Give me Kentucky minus 2 in the hook. Heading to the Big Ten up next, guys. 12 noon Eastern, Indiana and Michigan. 45.5 being the total. Michigan minus 33.5 as the home favorite. Indiana is off of a bye. That's something I always try to look at, but I'm not sure in this situation it's going to help too much. This is an Indiana Hoosiers team that had to go to overtime against Akron, the Zips from the MAC. They also lost 44-17 to Maryland. Those are their 2 finals the last 2 weeks. So they're not playing all that good of football right now. And Michigan's 6-0 this season, one of the best teams in college football, in my opinion. They've covered each of the last 2 as about minus 17 point favorites. They won those 2 games 45-7 and 52-10. So each of those would get us to the winner's circle, if you will, on Michigan. Jim Harbaugh, I went back and looked at home, particularly. He is covering bigger spreads at a pretty good rate. Therefore, guys, I would go with Michigan, laying the wood 33.5 in this one against Indiana. Likely one I don't get involved with, but if you made me, I'd be on Big Blue. I do want to give a shout out to the podcast sponsor here, guys. Viva Tequila Seltzer, vivatequilaseltzer.com. That's where you can go get it shipped to your house. And remember, it's not just a drink, it's a statement. Embrace the vibes, own that winning mindset, and let's live it up. Viva Tequila Seltzer, raising a toast to cashing those tickets. Cheers to have those hashtag Viva vibes. Guys, zero sugar in Viva. Helps with the hangover. If you and also one of their slogans, grow up, drink tequila. I've always found that one kind of catchy. So check them out, vivatequilaseltzer.com. Really happy to have them as the sponsor to the podcast. We'll head to the ACC up next, 3:30 Eastern, Wake Forest and Virginia Tech. We go to Lane Stadium here with the Hokies, laying 1.5 at home, 47 being the total. I ran this one by Mid-Major Matt. He has the coach for Virginia Tech on his show there, and he was saying he's really worried about Wake Forest in the next coming weeks because they've had some injuries at the wide receiver position. Donovan Green out, and when the injuries pile up, particularly at one position, I always take notice in college football, and we get that here with Wake, and it actually might be something we can step in front of because sure enough, they've played 3 straight games to the under, so it actually might be affecting how they're calling their offense. And that's one place where I've had success in sports betting is when injuries pile up on the offensive side, look to bet the under. Also, if injuries are piling up, kind of opposite on the defensive side, maybe look to bet that team over because we'll get the side, odds that will definitely move. Totals odds will move, but sometimes I don't think it's, fully accounted for in the market. So 47 being the total, and with Wake, their last 3 straight to the under, and actually it depends what number you're going off of, closing or opening number, but it could be 5 straight, all of their games this season going under. Plus, we've talked about it already on the podcast. It looks like weather is going to be an issue this weekend, guys, and we've seen some games be steamed towards the under. This is another one, cloudy, 15 to 30 mile per hour winds in Blacksburg projected on Saturday. I think that this matchup is going to be a kind of slower played game. I don't think we're going to get that Wake Forest speedy offense type deal. I would actually look to play this under 47, the Demon Deacons and the Hokies. Short segment here, guys. Some of you guys liking it. I love the comments, by the way, asking if I could go solo. So sure. Some of these games, I always try to set it up with giving the games to the handicappers where they're more like concentrated, specialized, if you will. So instead of giving Matt, a bunch of Power 5 games, giving him a group of 5, and I'll take this. It does work. So it's 5 sections every game on the board for this week. We got next game up, heading to the SEC. This is an interesting one, guys. We get the Florida Gators and the South Carolina Gamecocks, 141, 142, the rotation number, also 3:30 Eastern kick. And it looks like South Carolina -2, -2.5, depending where we're shopping. Short home favorites, 51.5 being the total. I wanted to get on Florida, just I had this game circled. I think that the Gators, as the season goes on, will become a better team. However, I didn't get there, and I don't think I will because this is a young team under Billy Napier. And I think we're getting a little bit of dichotomy, home road dichotomy, where the Florida Gators look good at home. They've had some big wins. Remember, they beat Tennessee, and they've looked terrible on the road. Their worst 2 games playing this season, that first game against Utah out in Salt Lake City, and then just 2 weeks ago against Kentucky up in Lexington. They really, weren't all that competitive in those 2 games, or at least maybe a little bit in the Kentucky game, but still not playing good football. And South Carolina is off of a bye. There's not a whole lot of kind of statistics in how the younger coaches for South Carolina are off of the bye. But last year I went back and looked, and they were the underdog off of their bye against Texas A&M and won outright. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. Another trend here I think might matter. South Carolina's 10 overs their last 15 games going back to last season. Although keep in mind, like we're talking about weather, there is possible rain in the forecast. So it kept me off of the total. Sidewise, I think with the Gators struggles on the road, Might lean with South Carolina here. Not a game I likely get involved with, but next game, actually, I think I will get involved with here. Big Ten kicking us off on Saturday, 12 noon Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Michigan State and Rutgers, Scarlet Knights, minus 5-point home favorites, 39.5 being the total. So low total here. For a team in Rutgers that's averaging 35 points in conference so far this season, they're 4-0 at home, both straight up and against the spread. So they've been covering point spreads. And they're another team where home road dichotomy might be kind of, showing here. They're 0-2 on the road. Granted, some of that or a lot of that is in their competition. They played Wisconsin and Michigan on the road. So did not fare well in those two contests. Michigan State here, we know that they had kind of the issues off season. Kind of depends how you want to look at it. But their head coach, he's shown the door. They are 8-1 in this series since Rutgers came over to the Big Ten. So that's something to keep in mind. They have kind of dominated Rutgers, but their last three straight, both against the spread and straight up, to Maryland, Washington, and Iowa, depending what number you got off. They got blown out by Maryland and Washington. Iowa landed right near the number, but it could be 0-3, both straight up and against the spread, their last three. So they might be heading in the wrong direction here as their schedule gets tougher. All of that pointing me towards Rutgers at home. I think they moved to 5-0 defending the home turf, both straight up and against the spread. I think they win by more than a touchdown. Give me the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. Again, guys, short segment here, just going solo, but two left. Louisville and Pittsburgh, 6:30 Eastern. We're seeing Louisville minus 7.5-point road favorites, 45 being the total. This is a tricky one because Louisville, most people would probably look at this and be like, man, I want to be on Louisville. They just beat Notre Dame. However, spot-wise, I mean, that was the biggest win for Louisville in probably since Lamar Jackson was taking snaps for the Cardinal. I mean, the spot is terrible here. Coming off of that win, now going on the road to Pitt. And Pittsburgh is off of a bye themselves. And they're doing some changing. Their quarterback, the transfer from Boston College, he's actually moving to tight end, which is kind of head scratching to me because if you read some of the reports, he was a guy that might be drafted into the NFL. Now he's not even playing quarterback anymore. But there's probably a reason why they're doing that. As a bettor, we're not there in practice. We don't know the backup, the third string, but obviously they're kind of pushing them to get playing time. That has to be something to do with making the change. And off of the bye week, it's sometimes the time to kind of, fix what's going wrong. And they're catching more than a touchdown here. So this is one of those, like, Louisville is probably the better team, but the spot-wise, really favoring the Panthers of Pitt at home. They are 0-4 against FBS competition, both straight up and against the spread. So this might be one of those hold your nose specials. And if you are going to bet Pittsburgh, probably sprinkle some on the money line, get a good plus price there because I could see it. Just, stranger things have happened than Pitt playing some really good football coming back home. We got last game that I'll break down and then a best bet. And it's UMass and Penn State here, guys. We get Penn State, the Nittany Lions, minus 41.5 as the home favorite, 54.5 being the total. So heavy favorites here for Penn State. But I'll tell you, it's with good reason. First off, look at James Franklin. What do we know about James Franklin? He'll run up the score. James Franklin, Gus Malzahn, some of these guys where it's like every time towards the end of the game, they'll still try to score touchdowns. Even if the backup quarterback is in, it's about the plays that they're running as well. If they're just running dives and ISOs and running out the clock, you want to take note of that as a bettor. He'll throw the ball and try to score. And sure enough, we've seen it so far this season. Penn State, 5-0 straight up, 5-0 against the spread. One of the better teams in the country. They've covered as 21-point, 26-point, and 49-point favorites already this season. So in this kind of area as a heavy favorite, they have covered point spreads. And I almost, doing prep work for this little short segment, Penn State is on a 12-0 against the spread run. I haven't really heard a lot of people talking about that. that's something that's, I don't know. That's something you got to take note of as a sports bettor. I mean, 12 straight against the spread. There's some Penn State faithful out there, likely with some extra coin in their pocket. And that's not a trend that I want to step in front of. I mean, this UMass team obviously taken a step up in class, playing Penn State. They did have a good win against New Mexico State week 1. They've looked better, like heading in the right direction as a program with their longtime. He's had some success at the head coaching position. Their coach, his name kind of escapes me at the top of my head, but I don't know. If you're betting UMass kind of against group of 5 teams, okay. But in this kind of setup here, tough place to play in Happy Valley. Penn State, 12-0 ATS run, minus 41.5. Give me the Nittany Lions as the play for the last game here, guys. And actually, that's going to be my best bet. Minus 41.5. Penn State, lay the wood with the Nittany Lions. Shout out to Viva Tequila Selzer, guys. Get it shipped to your house. VivaTequilaSeltzer.com. 0 sugar, 4.5% ABV. I am Drew Martin at Drew Martin Bets on Twitter and or X, I should say, YouTube, wherever you're downloading your podcasts at. Every game on the board. So that does it for the short segment, guys. If you could please smash that like button, comment below. Let me know you're watching, where you're watching from, what you're betting. All is welcome here, guys. So we'll be back tomorrow with Beating the Bookie and Robbie Vino to close it out. Week 7 college football, every game on the board. Thanks for tuning in. Cash those tickets.